Hi and welcome to the fourth part of using Warcraft Logs. This is a series of very short videos on particular aspects of using Warcraft Logs in order to improve the performance of yourself or your raid group while working on progress boss encounters. In this quick one, we're going to have a look at death logs. Now, these are extremely important because no matter what it is that's really causing you to wipe, ultimately it comes down to player deaths in most situations. It is very rare that a raid group remains alive for the entirety of a fight and then just dies to a berserk phase. So what's actually likely to have happened is if you miss a DPS check, you don't quite phase it quickly enough, it's probably because of the people that were dead that were not adding their DPS into there. So what's actually killed them? Well, what we can do on Warcraft Logs is just click on this button over here which says deaths. But there's a little bit more to it than that. I could look at this. This is from our Mythic Sisters of the Moon kill this week, where I'm afraid I did not distinguish myself. In fact, it was an embarrassing fight from my point of view. Apart from anything else, I died. I'm not used to this happening. So what we can see here is it's rapid shot. What that does for people who are not aware is it targets a random player and does an absolutely massive amount of shadow damage, like huge. You are going to need to survive this at appropriate gear level, certainly on Mythic, either very focused attention from a healer, or more usually you have to take some responsibility yourself and use a defensive or something like that. But at the same time, you look at this thing killing you and you can sort of say, well, okay, it may not have had anything, or the defensive I used wasn't there, so I died. And then we can look at Astral Purge again. This is, again, something that... It's not like looking at Glaive Storm. Glaive Storm means you've caught glaives in the face. I've done my fair share of that, I have to say. So it doesn't immediately look all that embarrassing. So what you can do is you can click on the player's name, and then you can start to look at a few other things. Now, what is really crucial is this thing up here. This tells you about any survival abilities you could have used. Now, we can see here, Divine Shield, it shows was used just under 2 minutes before. This thing has got, with the talent I take, a 4-minute cooldown, so it wasn't available. This is basically telling me it was not available at the time, so I couldn't have used that one. Is that the only defensive I have? No, I have Shield of Vengeance. Could have used that. Another thing, I'll come to that later, is you'd look at whether a health potion was used at the time. Now, I'm going to look at that later because I'm going to look down here as well. Because then what you look at, let's say you're satisfied that they had no defensive. Doesn't necessarily follow that it was totally not their fault that they died. So what we can do is we can look down here, for example, at the sorts of things. So we know I died from rapid shots. We took that damage. We could look down here, Umbra Detonation. This is what happens at certain points during phase 2 of the fight. The boss gets an absorbed shield on them. Everyone sort of gets a shield on them. And if it's not broken, then any remaining damage left on this absorbed shield is done to the raid, and you can see this did a fair amount of damage here. So this is actually like DPS not breaking through this shield quickly enough. So again, you wouldn't lay that down at the person who necessarily died as a result of it, but you can see this is between 3 and 4 seconds before and taking a significant amount of damage, over 1 million damage, which is over a quarter of my health. So straight away, anything that then hits me that does a load of damage, because I wasn't on full health to begin with, is going to look a little bit more dangerous. But we look down here and we don't see anything really out of the ordinary in the few seconds beforehand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look now at what I said before, which is about the use of health potions. So we click on problems. That's not very helpful. This feature is not supported for this boss and difficulty. This does sometimes happen. So in that case, we go back to analyze. Usually with problems, it'll tell you how many potions people used and things like that. You could easily tell there. Casts. So we click on casts. Now, then I'm just going to click down to all abilities. And there's a particular one I'm looking for, which is Ancient Healing Potion. Now, I've got it set for the whole raid here, not just one individual person. If I click on Ancient Healing Potion, this will tell me all the people that use that. You can see that I'm on there. It doesn't necessarily mean I used it at that time. So I'm going to click on myself there. I can see that I used a healing potion at the 5-minute 35 mark. Is that what coincides with my death? Yes, it is. So just before I died, I did use a healing potion. So phew, I'm sort of semi-blameless on that one as well. I did at least use something to try and avert death. But you could look at a situation like this where even if someone's taking necessary damage, they can't do anything about it. Did they use a defensive? Did they use a healing potion? These are the sorts of things you want to be looking at. Now, linking in a little bit with what I said last week in terms of replay, sometimes what kills people is a massive amount of raid-wide damage caused by, for example, something not being soaked correctly. This could be Armageddon Rain on Kil'jaeden, or it could be the Infernal Detonation on Goroth, for example. So at this point, what you'd be looking at is, well, that's the situation. Infernal Detonation is caused when the boss destroys all the pillars, and the more pillars that are up, the more damage it does. So people should have been destroying enough pillars so it still had one spike left. Sometimes people might die to it because there are no spikes left at all. One issue we had, for example, was that the ranged DPS who need to spawn the spikes spawn where they are, kept spawning near the fire destroys the spikes. That means then you don't have to stand behind. So you can then use the replay function to see how people are moving. So here's Goroth about to do his infernal burning. We're obviously stood behind the spikes there. Then we need to move immediately out. We can see some people here, if I click on this particular mage, who's got an ability on which means that they need to scatter out. So we need to check that they have sort of managed to do that. I'm going to click back on the boss to have a look at the various things he's casting. Various bits of movement. As we see people get hit by certain abilities, are they moving where they're supposed to? If they get Crashing Meteor, for example, are they actually moving so that they're not going to be stood on someone else? Are the range properly spread out? Here's how it should be happening. This is not what was happening earlier in the night. With the range spread out, because spikes can randomly target them, and we want them at various points of the room, round about the middle area, but we don't want them all in one place, and we don't, because that means someone with Shattering Star might end up easily breaking all of them, or more than is strictly required. Similarly, you might end up with fire spawning in a particular area, and then it wipes out all your spikes as well. So we want to not put all our eggs in one basket. So the replay function is also really useful when it comes to cause of death, because a cause of death could be indirect. It could be someone not doing the mechanics correctly. They get away with it, they don't die, but it kills someone else because too much damage is then done. Looking at Demonic Inquisition on Mythic, again we can see some examples of damage which wouldn't necessarily have been the fault of the people using it. Pangs of Guilt, for example, is an ability that is supposed to be interrupted. So the particular person who was hit and one shot with that, obviously that ability was not interrupted. And we can see that that did a ridiculous amount of damage on them. Enough that if they weren't on absolutely full health, that it could easily just kill them straight out. Now the final thing you want to look at usually is healing done, what the healers were doing to try and heal particular people. It's always the first thing people do is blame the healers, but of course it's the last thing to really look at in many ways. Now obviously this is just giving you the last 5 or 6 seconds. You may not feel that that's quite adequate, so there is a bit of a workaround with this one. If we know the person died at 1 minute 41, what we can do is we're going to do healing here. So what we're going to do is going to do damage taken here. We're going to click on this particular person that we wanted to have a look at. So let's say we wanted to have a look at a little bit earlier. So I'll go right from 123 to just 145, which is a few seconds after they died there. So we can see what sort of where the damage was and where they took it from. We can turn off some of these depending on which ones we want to look at, because that Pangs of Guilt was just one shot there. We can look at other forms of damage that they were taking before it. We'll We can just have them on a bit at a time if we want, or all three. Now let's say we want to have a look at what healing was done on them in all that lead up as well. So of course we're going to click on healing. This time we're going to click done to friendly, and the friendly of course is this person here. But we're going to click that off because that's just showing the healing they did to themselves. So we can see in that period the vast majority of healing they received they did from themselves. But if we wanted to have a look at particular levels of healing done by individuals, then of course you can check that with those individual healers as well. Now this isn't necessarily, as I say, the best one to look at because they died to what was effectively a massive amount of damage from an ability that never should have gone out. So then what we could look at, go back to Sister of the Moon, this time one of the wipes, and we could look at, for example, another rapid shot death. And again, if we wanted to have a look here, so we could see that this person died at 241. So again, I'm going to go back to damage taken for the entire fight. Let's go back to about, well, 218 will do. To 245. The particular person we're interested in here, Luffy, so we could also check, obviously rapid shot was doing a lot of the damage there. They were also taking damage from Astral Purge, which of course is going to happen there. So again, usual thing, if you want to check on the healing done to them, healing. Done to friendly. That would be Luffy of course. But we tick off the Luffy up here, because we want to see all the healing that was done, and we can see the attention they were getting from various healers here, and the nature of what that healing was, so we can see which abilities were used there as well, and over what period of time. We could change these times as we want. All you have to do if you want to look at a different period of time is just highlight it like this, and it will automatically zoom in. And if we want to change it back out again, you just click on reset zoom, and then you just have to remake your window. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of idea of the way you can use Warcraft Logs to investigate people's deaths. Several ways there. You can look directly in the death log. You can check the replay for what was happening. You can also check the healing done during particular periods of time. Obviously round about the window if someone's dead, that what healing was done to them and when, what abilities were used, and so on. So again, a very powerful tool, because ultimately if people stay alive, then the bosses tend to die a lot more quickly. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're enjoying the series. For other ones in the series, check the card in the top right. That'll link you to the playlist where you can find other ones in this series. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.